In spring 2015, I ran a 10k time trial in a little over 44 minutes. Fast forward to February 2023 and I've managed to get that time down to 33 flat. Today I want to talk a little bit about what steps I've had to take to get my time down to 33 minutes and what training fundamentals have played a key role. So welcome back to another video. My name's Andy, the Forest of Dean runner, and today I hope to give you guys 7 tips that are going to help you guys understand, in particular training fundamentals, what has got me from just over 44 minutes down to 33 flat. The first couple are a little bit generic, but really crucial for me to mention, and then points 3 to 7 are more training specific stuff that I want to dive in and talk about. So without further ado, we'll jump straight into this. If you're excited for today's video, guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, and of course subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. Let's dive in with number 1. So before we get into the specifics, lifetime miles is the first thing that I just have to mention. Consistency, turning up day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out. When I started my running journey, back when I did that time trial just over 44 minutes, I was running in and around, my first year I think it was like 1500 miles for the year, and gently over the years I've progressed to in and around 2,300, 2,400, taking small incremental steps each year, raising my mileage gently without any massive jumps, to the point now where I average in and around 55 to 60 miles a week when I'm doing a decent training block, sometimes higher, sometimes a little bit lower. So you've just got to bear this in mind, that when I'm giving you or about to give you these tips that are hopefully going to help you and help you understand the progression I've made, you've got to understand there's a big base level that goes on here with all these training blocks stacked on top of each other, lifetime miles. It equates to so much. And the other more generic point that I just want to mention is, as I just alluded to, training block on top of training block on top of training block. Not all of those training blocks are 10k related. Switching up the stimulus is really important. Changing distances. I found that training for longer distance events like half marathons and marathons have made a massive difference to my aerobic system, my aerobic development, whatever you want to call it. I feel like I have a bigger engine when I'm switching up between the two blocks, going away from a marathon block, jump back into a 10k block, and I feel like I've leveled up my training, if that makes sense. I feel like I developed so much more strength and power when I do train for those longer distances, out time on feet a lot more than I would be with 10k. So when I come back to it, I feel like I've got a bigger engine there ready to take on the training. So when we're talking about lifetime miles and stacking all those training blocks on top of each other, I just wanted to make it very clear that not all of those training blocks are 10k specific. Tip number 3, doing different styles of interval workouts throughout the training block and throughout multiple training blocks. Let me explain. I'm going to lump all of these interval workouts into one because I'm just going to kind of put them all under one umbrella. We're talking shorter intervals, really short, sharp intervals with longer recoveries. We're talking longer intervals with shorter recoveries, and we're talking sort of fartlek workouts. We're a little bit more unstructured in where I might take stuff to undulating terrain and just go out there and work more based on effort over distance and time. So with this mix and variety of interval workouts, I'm aiming to hit different stimulus in my training. So for the shorter intervals with longer recoveries, I'm really aiming to hit that top end, but then with the longer recoveries, I'm allowing my heart rate to come back down, relax a little bit, and then go again. And with that, I'm looking to really focus on my speed work. So I'm looking for a heart rate graph that might track something like that, really high and spike in the interval, but then allow my heart rate to come back down, rest, and go again on the next interval. And that's really beneficial for building that top end speed. When we're talking about longer intervals with shorter recoveries, that heart rate graph is going to be a little bit more even. So it's still going to spike up during the interval, but it's going to come down a little bit less because you're not having as much time to recover, and then up again for a longer period of time, and then down for a short period. And it's going to be a little bit more equal than the bigger spikes you'll see in pure speed work, and that's going to be focused more on speed endurance work. So I'm looking to keep my heart rate elevated for a longer period of time, meaning I'm trying to work on that endurance rather than just in that pure speed. And then I'm talking about fartlek workouts, which realistically are basically interval workouts, but they can be a little bit more unstructured and you can just have a little bit more fun with them. But for those type of workouts, I tend to take them to undulating terrain, so it might be out on the trails, might be out on hilly roads, whatever it might be. I'm looking definitely there to just focus on strength, getting that leg strength, not focused on time, not focused on pace. It's just purely about the right effort. Regular intervals are more specific to target sort of pace zones and effort levels, but when we're talking about fartlek workouts, you really are just purely effort levels, getting out there, working on that leg strength, pushing those hills, working hard, and the whole package there, the whole 3 types of workouts that I've just talked about combined, if you drop them in the right place in the training block, they really can make a massive difference. And tip number 4 is going to be practicing race pace during during training. This comes towards the end of my training blocks usually, when I'm starting to get more specific for the event that I'm training for. So in the beginning of the training block, we're going to have a good mix up of intervals, but as we get towards that tail end, we want to get a little bit more specific. We might be doing certain intervals at goal race pace. This is vital, I find, because it allows me to work out if I feel that race pace is suitable or not suitable. Am I working too hard? Am I not working hard enough? And that am I working hard or not hard enough or too hard is all found out from that previous step, which is training in those different range of intervals. Because when you work on that speed and that speed endurance and then that strength combined with all those three types of intervals we just talked about, you start to learn what those effort levels feel like, what 5k effort feels like, what 10k effort feels like. And we'll talk about in the next point how you can gauge that even better. But for me, race pace really is a good simulator. It allows me to work out if I feel good during training, because I feel good in training, I'm going to feel even better on race day when there's adrenaline involved, I'm properly fueled, and my mind is focused and ready to go. Because you know, when you turn up to race day, you can sometimes, depending on external factors, not have a great day, but a lot of the times you're going to feel 10 times better than what you do in training. So practicing it in training is key, gets your body used to it. Your body starts to understand what race effort feels like, translate that to race day, and you'll feel absolutely brilliant. And tip number 5, something I've found to be really, really beneficial, a specific workout type that allows me not just to train at race pace like we talked about, but to train slightly above and below, are those cut down interval workouts. I find them really, really beneficial for me to have a bit more of a broader range when I'm getting a little bit more specific. So as an example, if I'm training for 10k effort, I might have some intervals that are sort of like at my 1 hour effort or half marathon effort above, and then I might below have some 5k effort ones. Just as an example, you might have something like 2x4 minutes at half marathon effort, and then you might have 4x3 minutes at 10k effort, and then you might spin the legs a little bit fast at the end with like 4x30 seconds. Just an example, you go through the gears. It's a saying I like to say quite a lot, going through the gears. You're just kind of like revving the engine and just building up through the workout and finishing by spinning the legs out really, really quickly. Again, just starting slightly slower allows you to build into it, warming up the body, get your body ready for that race pace specific section of the workout, and then spinning them faster teaches you psychologically and also physically, I should say mentally probably, that finishing kick is going to be there when you need it at the end of a race. Because when you spin the legs out at the end of a workout and you think, oh, I've got nothing left, but then suddenly those 4x30 seconds come around and you absolutely nail them, you know then that you can replicate that on race day. I always feel like I can pick things up at the end of a race, despite how good or bad a race has gone. I usually often find that in the last 800 to 400 meters, I have a little bit of something in the tank just to put it in, and that's just practice during that interval type of workout, that cut down workout that we do during training. And tip number 6, getting some tune-up races in there is really gonna help. This is more specific to sort of 10k races and below, because the further up the distance you go, the more those tune-up races take out of you and then can affect your following week's training. As an example, like if you're doing marathon training, you might want to tune up with things like a half marathon and maybe a 20-mile race. But if you think about it, those are quite taxing on the body. Whereas if we're doing 10k training, we might want to be looking at like 3,000 meter races. We might look at 5ks. I've recently done a 4-mile race, stuff that's slightly shorter that doesn't take as much out of you than something like a long distance event would do. Again, tune-up races, brilliant, simulates race day, gets you in the right mindset, teaches you to fuel properly so that you're ready because you're practicing for the big day. And as I said, it doesn't take as much out of you. You can practice that race pace you've been training for in training and see how it feels when it comes to race day. Now, as I just mentioned earlier in the video, external factors, we can't always control those, weather, how we're feeling that day. But if everything's right and the stars are aligning, then you can go out there and you can see how that race pace feels. You can see how that race effort feels and see what happens at the end of the race. Could you hold that pace? Did it feel good? Was it too easy, or was it just a little bit too much? And then at that point, you can slightly adapt your training if you need to, if you adapt those paces. Obviously, we're aiming over time to get those paces down through the training block, but if you're getting quite close to the goal race and it's feeling still a little bit too tough, that might be a point where you go, right, I'm just going to readjust this slightly, just notch a few seconds off per K or mile. I want to get through this training block uninjured, get a good new PB and move on to the next and give it another crack next time. Or you can go, do you know what, this feels really good, I'm going to stick at this training pace and intensity, and we're going to go out there and nail race day. So tune-up races, it's great to simulate everything that you're going to be going through on race day. And the seventh and final tip, this is really personal. I'm going to share my thoughts on this, but you obviously may or may not have different thoughts. But coming out of those race day shoes and coming out of those plated shoes during training, I found can be really beneficial when it comes to race day. So I've done training blocks where I've used carbon plated racing shoes a fair bit, maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, or I've used them barely at all. At the moment, I'm in a phase of just using them once a week and that's it. I try not to use them too much, and I find that that saves the magic come race day. I feel like I get that extra edge mentally and physically. When I get there and slip on the race shoes, I kind of feel like, right, I've stepped up my game. I've got this extra tool that I didn't have during training. So that's why I love to now really kind of pull back on using them. But at the same time, I understand the benefits of using them in training because they help our legs recover. I just often find that I sometimes get calf issues if I use carbon plated shoes too much. So it's just too much of an injury risk for me. Also, as I said, I like to save that magic come race day. But if you are using them a lot in training, I guess the argument for here is that you're going to feel really good during training, maybe not have that magic come race day, but if you can handle using them quite a lot, your legs are going to be quite recovered, you're going to be able to nail training sessions, you're going to feel really good, you're just not going to have that extra edge come race day. So it really does come down to personal preference, but for me, I have found a massive benefit because then I think to myself during training, I'm doing a heck of a lot more work here. It's all me doing these interval workouts. When I get and put the racing shoes on come race day, I know that the shoes are going to benefit me and they're going to give me that extra edge. So completely up to you guys, but for me, that's how I see that scenario. So there we go. Those are the 7 things that have really massively helped me take my time dramatically down, over 11 minutes in the 10K distance, and hopefully will be some more later this year or into next year. Definitely going to be focusing a lot more on that 10K, and I hope those tips helped you guys. I had to discuss the generic stuff at the start. It's really important, and there's plenty more stuff that I could touch on, like strength and conditioning, mobility, all of that stuff, but I really wanted to dive into training specifics and what I have really found has helped me. That mix of interval work, the cut down workout in particular, going through the gears, the different types of terrain, whether it's fartlek work, whether it's just standard interval speed work, whatever it might be, all of those things just kind of add up to having a really beneficial training block. At the moment, I'm just over halfway in my current training block, and to be honest with you, a lot of what I've talked about is going on in my current training block. So if you're interested in following along, make sure you give me a follow on Strava. I'm also documenting all this information on my website. You can see all my training on there. If you're interested, head over there and have a look. You can have a bit more of a deeper dive in there. That's it from me today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider giving it a like, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. I'll see you on the next one. Until then.